Hello and welcome to our video today where we're going to be talking about Moz's recent search engine ranking factor study. I'm Chad Hill and I have Adam Setzer with me.
Hey, good morning, Chad. I love these Moz studies because they ask all the experts across the country, the top people in SEO, the consultants and the agencies to, pool their collective knowledge and say, Google won't tell us exactly what makes you rank. That's part of their secret sauce. It's a closely guarded secret, but we like to pool all these heads together and do a structured survey to try to figure out what's going on. So I know we always love to get this data and love to dissect it for our viewers. And pretty much, without exception, every couple of years when they release this, chat, it seems like backlinks are still the major driver of the Google algorithm. So today, if you're hoping for breaking news to say Moz has discovered it's not links, sorry, that is not the case. It is still links. So, but they try to get deeper than that and help us understand where has Google improved. So here are a couple statistics to open the conversation. They looked a lot at page authority. There's been a lot of talk of domain authority over the last few years, but page authority seems to also be a top ranking factor. I want to discuss that and the implications. They highlight on-page optimization, still very, very important. They talk about a lot of correlations, and sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around this, but they say things like high-ranking sites are highly correlated with page-level link metrics. And so, Chad, I'd like to get into what we think that means. Page-level anchor text, so that's a fancy way to say the anchor text on your backlink, still very, very important. But again, they're highlighting what page it's on and what authority that page carries. So the interaction of having anchor text on a page that it itself has no authority versus one that does. And then they throw out, and this will be a little controversial, Google plus ones, really important. So there are some of the higher level takeaways from the Moz study. Let's dissect this, Chad.
Yeah, and it's really, I agree, Adam, it really is interesting when we get these things. Now, I think first of all, people have to really understand that Moz doesn't know the algorithm. No one does. Google does, and that's it. And we know that there's over 200 factors that go into the algorithm. And so really what this study is all about is trying to sort of dissect that and understand, from a person who's not in the inner workings of Google, what can we understand about what's good and what helps our site rank better and what doesn't. So, again, I think a couple of things here are that what we want to do is use this to understand what tactics we should continue to work with and which ones are not as effective. And I think Adam, for example, you mentioned the one about the Google Pluses. What do we know about that?
Well, we've seen a study that basically debunks this correlation. I mean, the correlation's there. So pages with a lot of plus ones also rank very highly, so that's correlation. But correlation does not imply causation, and we covered, I think in another video, you can look it up, a study most recently that actually did a very nicely controlled study and actually demonstrated there is no causal relationship. Matt Cutts even chimed in on the design of the study. So that one's strictly correlation. In other words, things that rank highly tend to get a lot of pluses. So if you run and go buy a bunch of Google Pluses, not a good idea, not going to help you, waste of money, waste of time. So we can kind of throw that one out the door. But let's dive into some of these other ones. What do you think they're getting at with this notion of page authority versus domain authority? Anchor text, of course, always stand by, but at the page level, is there anything we can take away there?
Yeah, well, I think that we've always talked about the idea that the more value a page, it really comes down to if a page is deemed to be important, and then that page is referencing another page. Clearly, that's a much more powerful reference or vote, if you will, for the page receiving that link than a page that's buried in the site somewhere that no one ever finds. And so that's clearly good. The other thing that we definitely saw coming out of and I think what's interesting there, Adam, is that a lot of the factors that they were talking about here have to do with trying to understand the quality or the experience that someone might have on the website. So 4 other factors that popped up as being important were things like, what are the authorship metrics, and what's the correlation between authorship metrics and rankings, things like, whether there's structured data, Google Plus. All of these factors are sort of the new ones that as we look at what changes should we be making or what things should we be focusing on, it does seem like, again, increasing the authority and using things like the authorship, the value of the authorship of a certain page seems to be gaining an authority or an importance.
I agree with you. So let's try to get real practical for some of our small business SEO guys and internet marketers. So if you score an opportunity to do a guest blog post on a domain that's got a nice high authority, let's say 45 or 50, I think the old thinking was great. You're getting some root domain juice from that domain authority 50 site. But I think what this is telling us is, well, if your post is buried deep, as you said, Chad, and it itself to that page doesn't attract a lot of backlinks, and therefore the page authority, even though the domain authority is quite high, the page authority that you end up on could be quite low, could be a 10 or a 12. That really will not help your rankings nearly as much as if that piece gets a lot of action, attracts some of its own backlinks, and carries a domain authority that's quite a bit higher. So I think that's some of the subtlety that Moz is implying is now in play, and I'm pretty sure Google didn't have that sophistication several years ago. They've obviously been growing their algorithm, and they're starting to pay attention to the subtlety of what page you're on and what backlinks that page itself was able to attract, which I think these data imply, which I think is probably interesting. It really speaks to creating high quality stuff. If you're just out there to score a link and then it just slips off the homepage into oblivion, what this data implies is that's not going to help you nearly as much as something that doesn't have to go viral, but it just has to be appreciated and earn a few backlinks, which we all know is a lot easier to do when it's higher quality. The other thing that strikes me here, Chad, on this one last point on this here is that these factors are not all that different than they've always been. It's still links, it's still anchor, it's still authority. But what they don't really talk about here are then the web spam filters, which it almost feels to me when I go through these algorithms, particularly in light of what's happened in 2013, that there's really two algorithms. There's the core ranking algorithm, which Moz seems to have nailed here, but what they don't really address then is the anti-spam algorithm, which seems to hover in right behind it and say, okay, you've got all these things, but then we have a whole different set of criteria to try to figure out, was it natural or was it contrived? And that seems like a whole other discussion that, as I went through all of these analyses, I realized just isn't in here, and again speaks to why you want to do very, very high quality work, attract backlinks that just have no discernible pattern because they are natural. It does spread. Certainly you're going to work at syndication. It's not build it and they will come, but the higher the quality, the more any of those yucky patterns that Google's anti-spam filters would pick up on just won't find.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It does seem like there's sort of the one that gives and the one that takes away. But yeah, as a kind of a final wrap-up, I mean, if you don't understand anything that Adam and I just talked about, really at the end of the day, as you sort of suggested, Adam, this is all about, if you're focusing on trying to get people to really engage and enjoy the information and the places you're posting information on the web, then all of these factors are going to play into that. So again, if you're on a website that already has an audience, great, you've got a really big check on high domain authority website. If you then work to get your content in a place on the website where it's going to get viewers and likely is going to earn some links, then again, check mark, you're on a high page authority site on a high domain authority website. So these factors really, at the end of the day, if you just think about the audience, which is what we've been talking about a lot recently, think about the audience and really trying to get your audience to find your information that you're publishing and syndicating, then 80% of what we're talking about is going to be built right in there.
Well, great. Well, we'd like to hear your thoughts. What did you take away from the Moz study? Do you quote this with clients? Is it useful? What do you find confusing? And as always, if you've enjoyed this video, we sure hope you'll subscribe and join us on the next one.